In this video of the Intro to Oxygen Plant Procurement series, we will be reviewing infrastructure requirements.
There are three key types of infrastructure considerations to note when procuring a PSA plant. These are environmental, civil, and electrical infrastructure considerations. Let's start by exploring the environmental considerations. Three key pieces of environmental data should be shared with a PSA plant supplier during the procurement process: humidity and temperature, altitude, and whether or not the site is a coastal location. Humidity and temperature. A supplier must know the humidity and temperature ranges where a PSA plant will be installed. PSA plant equipment operates within a temperature range that varies by manufacturer. For example, some equipment cannot be guaranteed to function in settings over 40 degrees Celsius or below 5 degrees Celsius. When providing a containerized PSA plant, a supplier may include air conditioning, heating, insulation, or other methods of temperature control to ensure their system can function in all seasonal conditions. In the case of non-containerized plants, suppliers should advise on the ventilation and temperature requirements for the space to ensure the equipment is able to operate as intended. This may require passive ventilation or active cooling. Altitude. A supplier will size some equipment based on the altitude of the PSA plant. A supplier must know the altitude where the PSA plant will be installed to inform the sizing of the PSA plant air compressor. At higher altitudes, a compressor may need to be upsized. Coastal locations. Telling a supplier that a PSA plant is located near the coast may prompt the supplier to include provisions to combat corrosive elements such as rust caused by sea air. Communicate the humidity and temperature, altitude, and coastal considerations to a supplier early in the procurement process. The environment must also be considered when selecting a plant location. Environmental factors to consider here include dust, air pollution, and ventilation. Dust. Limit the dust intake into the plant as much as possible. Keep protection from dust in mind when selecting PSA plant locations and designing a PSA plant house. Excess dust can reduce filter life and damage plant equipment if not handled properly. If dust cannot be avoided, filters must be changed more frequently. Air pollution. It is typically recommended that PSA plants be located at least 10 meters from sources of air pollutants such as generator exhaust, incinerators, smoke from kitchens, or idling vehicle exhaust in order to minimize contamination to the air intake. Ventilation. The location of the PSA plant must lend itself well to ventilation. Proper air circulation is critical to keep the plant equipment cool, to supply the air intake of the air compressor, and to ventilate any excess nitrogen and oxygen in the space. Ductwork is needed to properly ventilate the exhaust of the air compressor outside the PSA plant room or container. Checkpoint. How far away should an oxygen plant be from pollution sources like generators, burn pits, incinerators, and vehicles? Is it A, at least 10 meters away, B, less than 1 meter away, C, 5 meters away, or D, it does not matter as long as the PSA plant is downwind of the pollution source? The correct answer is A, at least 10 meters away. The method by which your PSA plant is housed will influence the infrastructure needed to support your PSA plant. Your PSA plant may be housed in an existing room or building, a new plant building, or in a containerized solution. For existing rooms or buildings, the space must meet the vendor's space, ventilation, and structural requirements. For new plant buildings, the same requirements must be met. However, there is extra flexibility to design in extra space such as an office, storage room, or restrooms. For containerized plants, there are different considerations. Because the plant layout and ventilation designs are the responsibility of the supplier, there are fewer plant housing design responsibilities for the facility procuring the plant. One requirement for civil works for a containerized plant is the size of the concrete platform, which should meet the vendor's requirements. A canopy is strongly recommended to provide protection to the container and may be required by certain suppliers. To explore the site considerations for the different housing options in greater detail, see the resource document titled Oxygen Plant Site Considerations, available at bhioxygen.org. Electrical systems are the most complex infrastructure requirement. Adequate electrical infrastructure is the most common obstacle to PSA plant operation and requires special attention. It is typically recommended that all PSA plants have a primary and backup source of power. Typical power supplies are utility transformers, diesel generators, and solar installations. The most common arrangement is a utility transformer as the primary power supply and a diesel generator as a backup power supply. However, solar or diesel generators may also serve as the primary power source. Electrical infrastructure to support a PSA plant may be existing or new. If the existing infrastructure is used, it must be assessed to ensure it has sufficient capacity. In addition to confirming capacity on the existing utility transformer and diesel generator, an experienced electrician should confirm that the existing cables, circuit breakers, and protections can support the added load of the PSA plant. If there is insufficient capacity on existing infrastructure or no existing infrastructure, new infrastructure will be needed. The power supplies, cables, circuit breakers, and protections must be sized adequately for the PSA plant and any additional loads that may be added to the system. If there are concerns about the power quality, share them with the supplier when purchasing your PSA plant. Issues can be mitigated by adding equipment like automatic voltage stabilizers, or AVRs, surge protectors, and variable speed or frequency drives, VSDs or VFDs, on air compressors. For solar installations aimed to support PSA plants, one must consider the capacity, operating plan, costs, and maintenance. Capacity. PSA plants have high power requirements. In order to support the load of a PSA plant, a large solar installation is needed. In some instances, the capacity of the solar installation may be limited by the space available. Costs. Due to the large capacity needed to support a PSA plant's power requirements, a solar installation for a PSA plant will be expensive. Solar installations can reduce operational costs by reducing or eliminating electric bills with a local utility. Operating plan. Some PSA plants are designed to operate 24 hours per day to ensure a steady stream of oxygen to patients. Consider if the PSA plant will run overnight or if an alternative source of oxygen is possible. If the plant must run overnight, an alternate power supply or energy store may be needed. Maintenance. As with PSA plants, maintenance of solar installations is critical. Ensure that resources to maintain the system are available. Capacity, operating plan, costs, and maintenance. If one or more of these considerations may be an issue, consider a smaller solar installation. The power generated can still be used to offset part of the PSA plant load. Did you know? If your facility needs upgrades, it can take months or years to accomplish the electrical work needed to support a PSA plant. Our recommendation? Assess your electrical supply before ordering your PSA plant. In conclusion, a PSA plant has unique infrastructure requirements that must be considered early. Neglecting these elements can lead to delays in commissioning, damage to plant equipment, or the inability to run your PSA plant effectively.
We hope that you have enjoyed this introduction to infrastructure requirements. Continue on to learn more about planning for maintenance, specifically maintenance requirements.